This morning, I was in Colossians, obviously, right here. Colossians 2, 1 through 3. And I was really following up on a theme that I saw in Colossians 1 that was Paul's desire and for this church to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, verse 10, and then bear fruit. And this is the mark of a maturing believer, is that they are walking in a manner worthy of the Lord, and that they are bearing fruit, and they are increasing in the knowledge of God. So what does that even mean, increasing in the knowledge of God? That means they're growing in their knowing of God. So they know God better. And when they do that, then they have endurance and patience and joy and all of these things. But I was just looking down here, verse 28, that we may present everyone mature in Christ. And so Paul was toiling and struggling with all of his energy in Colossians 1. And then this morning I was looking at kind of a continuation of this. And he's saying, I want you to know, like, this incredible struggle I've had for you, and I want you to be encouraged. I want you to be knit together in love, to reach all the riches of assurance and understanding and knowledge of God's mystery, which is Christ. So in other words, right here, knowledge of God's mystery is really just saying, I want you to reach the full assurance and understanding and know Christ. Like, I want you to fully understand Christ and what is yours in Christ, because in Him is all the treasure of wisdom and knowledge, like everything we could ever hope for. And again, down in Colossians 2, built up in Him, because I want you to walk in Him. And then down here at the end of Colossians 2, nourished, knit together, grows with a growth that is from God. So this whole, like, chapters 1 and 2, I just kept seeing this growing up in Christ, this maturity in Christ. And I wrote this right here: knowing precedes growing. So we have to know God to grow in God. And then, of course, I have on my mind just like sexual purity, which plagues all of us. And I remembered in 1 Thessalonians, I had written some notes back in 2018, and it's just all about, this is the will of God right here, your sanctification. You abstain from sexual immorality. Unlike, get this, unlike the Gentiles who what? Do not know God. Who do not know God. And I remember looking at some other things on this. So I was just writing down what is like God's will for my life. His will is my sanctification, my sexual purity, my holiness. And then I found this Piper article, and he says right here, like the Gentiles who do not know God, knowing God. This means that knowing God is the path to sexual purity. If you are struggling with sexual impurity in mind or body, the immediate and long-term strategy is know God. And then down here, he says the same thing. If you are in bondage to pornography and fantasies or fornication or adultery, the immediate and long-term strategy of this war is know God versus the Gentiles who do not know God. And the struggle even with believers, if we are not growing in our knowledge of God, we're likely not growing in our affections for Christ. And as I was going back and looking at like different, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and it just really struck me that, like, seeing 2017, 18, 19, 20, like, these journals are evidence of God's grace. It's evidence of a growing knowledge of Christ by His Spirit in His Word. And as I've grown in that, Not that I didn't really study the Bible before, but I think in 2017, really in 2018 and 19, I got extremely focused on that. It's this growing knowledge of God has increased my affections for Christ more and more and more so that I'm growing up, I'm maturing in Christ. And as I'm maturing in Christ, I see Him as a superior treasure to treasures of this world, or pornography, sexual satisfaction. And it just really struck me. So my encouragement, and then really what I'm seeing from Paul is Paul saying, what I'm taking from this passage is also my heart should be for others, like Paul's was. Like he poured out, he suffered. I want you to know the great struggle I have for you. He was struggling for these people, praying for them. He gave everything. For this I toil, verse 29, struggling with all of God's energy that works in me for other people. Like he had reached a certain maturity, not that he stopped maturing, but he got to a point where he was saying, this is not just about me. This is about others. This is about the church. This is about people that God's given me. And I know that so much of my time is spent about me growing. And that to me is a mark of immaturity. I need to be also, as I'm growing and understanding, I need to be bringing other people along with me. And so just some thoughts in Colossians 1 and 2 that I thought were really, really interesting. And just, again, evidence of God's grace. He does the work. There's nothing that I figured out that was so scientific or incredible for quitting pornography, but it really was God's grace, just a growing knowledge of Jesus Christ. So knowing precedes growing, and He provides the superior treasure and greater affections for Him, if we will be diligent to search for Him and look for Him, like Psalms 1 through 3 says.